Okay, so here's the John Ellis machine right here, and I'll just explain a little bit about the different parts. First of all, you'll see there's two plugins here. One of them is for the heater right here, and the other one is for the two UV lights. So I'll just take the lid off for a moment. I don't have the lid plugged in right now, but the way that I've got it hooked up here is that the water comes from the cold right here, so I would pop that on here, and then I would turn it on, and I'd get the cold water running in the top here. And that spot right there is circling around, and that's coming out this pipe right here. This is what they would call energized tap water, or sometimes called light distilled water. Whereas the real solid distilled water is coming out this top one. So you can see by looking on the inside, that's actually that pipe that circles around and comes out the top of the heater. And so what happens in the heater is you can see at the very bottom right there, I think there's a pipe that goes into the heater. So as I'm running cold water into the top here, that water is, the cold water's at the top, the hot water at the bottom is being shot into the side here. So it moves back and forth between the cold water and the boiling water about 100 times every gallon. And in doing so, when it moves into this side, which is the heater, it spins it. So this is where it's using some of Victor Schauberger's structured water technology. So it's spinning that water, which is raising everything up to the top. It's got two UV lights. I'll just show you one of the UV lights here. So it's got two UV lights that are basically then neutralize any kind of pathogens and that kind of stuff. We all know that UV light's used for cleaning things, sterilizing things. So that's why they've got two in there. And this is the Electron 5. There's another version called the Electron 4 that only has one of these. So a little bit newer parts and that kind of stuff. So again, it's spinning it around, and the steam is coming out this top. So the steam is actually dripping into here. So this probably takes a couple of hours to fill a bottle of the pure distilled water, whereas this water that's coming out the bottom here, which could be called light distilled or energized tap water, I can fill a bottle in probably 10 minutes or something like that. And if you go to John Ellis's website or even if you go to YouTube and you watch all the testimonials where one of them was a sewage treatment plant where they put a bunch of the John Ellis water in and it cleaned all of the bacteria and everything out of the plant. Another one with a swimming pool. They're always using this water here. So the water coming out of this light distilled or energized tap water has the same hydrogen bonding angle as the steam distilled water. The only difference is the steam distilled water is going to be a little bit cleaner because of the fact that it's actually steam distilled. And you can actually see in the bottom of I'll just turn that off for a minute. You can see in the bottom all of that sediment. That sediment's actually, we're in Vancouver, BC, and we're supposed to have some of the best water anywhere on the planet. That sediment's actually coming out of the water. So imagine if you were just drinking the water out of the tap, you'd actually be consuming all that sediment. And that sediment that you're seeing there is probably only about a few weeks worth of me making water, and not every day. Every few days sort of pumping out 10 gallons or something like that. So it's definitely cleaning the water while it energizes the water at the same time. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it, right? There's not much to it. It's a very simple machine. They do suggest that you plug it in directly into the wall instead of like an extension cord or something like that. But yeah, and I usually actually leave the lid off because then I can kind of keep track of what's happening on the inside here, and I can keep my eye on it. Because you want to get the right flow going so that it doesn't overflow. So you need to make sure that it's flowing out here properly. But it's very simple, actually. It's a very simple machine. And you can find these machines at johnellis.com. So I bought this machine probably, it's been a year. I think I bought it last June. And I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest devices I've ever bought in my life, that's for sure. Okay, so if I'm going to do 1 gallon of pure distilled water, it's probably going to take about, it's between 2 to 3 hours, and that depends on how quickly the water is flowing through here. Because what I like to do is I like to actually have it as slow as possible. So if I can have it just dripping like that, it's going to take a lot longer. In fact, the steam distilled water doesn't change. It produces it slower when I have that water running slow like that. But what that does is that then allows the regular water here that we're drinking to move back and forth between the heating and the cooling more times than 100 times per gallon. And like he's talking about, you're going to get about 100 times per gallon. That depends on how much that's flowing. If I crank this up a lot, like if I have it running like that, well, it might only, let's say it might go back and forth 100 times per gallon, but if I slow that down, it might be 200 or something like that. So it's just actually going to make this water even more pure. So usually what I'll do is I'll run it actually as, and John Ellis also suggested that, he suggested running that as slow as possible. With this distilled water, as I mentioned, light distilled or the energized tap water, you can fill a gallon in about in about 10 minutes. So it's very quick. I mean, you can put out a lot of bottles.